This episode of Brains on Games will talk about an RPG-style board game that's reminiscent of Diablo. Welcome to Brains on Games. I'm Dr. Brian McDonald, and this episode we're going to talk about a board game that's reminiscent of those action RPG video games that maybe you've played before. But this is kind of a weird episode because I'm going to talk about the copy of this game that I have is the first edition that came out a while back. I only received it very recently, but there was on GameFound a campaign for a second edition with an expansion. So they had updated the packaging and some elements of the game and added some new scenarios, but the campaign was just canceled. Now, I still want to talk about this game because I do think it's got some really cool elements. It's got some things about it that I've never played before. I've never played a game like this. And so I have been looking forward to talking to all of you about it, but it's a game that's going to be very hard to find. It's hard to find now. It's only going to become harder to get because the company is completely closing its doors. So this is going to be a tough one. But one of the questions I want to ask, and I hope that you'll leave a comment in the comment section below the video, is tell me about a game that's similar to this one, because I enjoyed playing this game and I would like to play something similar and recommend something similar to parents out there who maybe don't have time to play a whole game of Dungeons and Dragons but want to get some of that feeling of an open world game where you can do almost anything, but there's not a lot of prep time other than setting up the box. The game is called Euthia, Torment of Resurrection, and I'm going to pick up this box. This is a game that's heavy in every sense of the word. You might hear me grunt like I'm picking up a milk carton at a convenience store, but here's what it looks like. Maybe you can see the whole thing on this camera, but it weighs a ton, and it is a heavy game in terms of its complexity. This box is full of stuff to the very top. I wasn't sure I was going to be able to close it. There's so many things in this box, and I'm going to have to clear out a cube on my shelf behind me in order to put this game on the shelf. This is a game. Euthia Torment of Resurrection is a game for between 1 and 4 players. You can play it with kids age 14 and up, and it is, like I said, a heavy one, so kids much younger than that are going to have a tough time with all the ins and outs of this one. It does have a steep learning curve. You can play a game maybe in 1 hour, but some of the more complex scenarios could take as long as 8 hours to play if you have a lot of players. 8 hours to play a board game. That's like a day at work. Let's talk a little bit more and take a deeper look at Euthia, Torment of Resurrection. As you can see, this box is completely full of things. The version they sent me came with a ton of baggies, and they sent along lots of organizers, and the organizers are super important. This game takes a long time to set up, and without those organizers, it would be even more complicated in order to get everything organized in order to play the game. There are tons of baggies, like I said. This box doesn't even hold everything that they sent. There's a whole other pack of elemental standees and some scenarios that go along with that wouldn't fit in the box no matter how hard I tried. So this is a huge game, and every single piece in this box is required for one scenario or the other. It is a heavy game, and I'm going to take some things out here and show you what it's all about. But it's a game where your victory is determined by the particular scenario that you play. So like I said, it's like an action RPG like Diablo. So you're building up a character and you're traveling around this open world and fighting monsters, but it's a game where your character is going to advance through the scenario and you'll finish out that part of the story. So it's not a game like, say, I think Gloomhaven would be a good example of an RPG style game, but it's more of a legacy game where you're playing you're playing with the same group from one game to the next. I love the idea of legacy games, but it's hard for me to get the same group of people together within a short enough period of time that we all remembered what happened last time and we still remember the rules, because usually with those legacy games, the rules kind of become more and more advanced as you play through those scenarios. So this game has isolated scenarios that you can play. And like I said, you could play a game in an hour once you get used to the rules. Now, we played one of the easier scenarios, but we just kept going. There is a round tracker, and so there are a limited number of rounds to play these different scenarios. But my friend and I who were playing it, we just couldn't resist. We just wanted to keep going and see what would happen if we did this or that. We wanted to try every little bit of the game. And rather than putting away pieces and taking it out again, we played it for 6 hours. Uh, and it was a scenario that was supposed to take maybe a couple of hours to play. Here I've got a little bit of the map set out. You've got Drow's character board, and this game is so RPG-like. You can move around this map. You can do almost anything you can think of that you could do in Diablo, fighting monsters, gathering resources, finding treasure, completing quests, like almost it's everything under the sun. It's such a sandbox style, RPG style game. The character board has spaces here for your abilities as your reputation increases, for equipment that you can buy, for treasure that you might find, or items that you might need to complete quests. There's spaces for all of that stuff. You've got a really clever way here of managing your actions. Each of these little action tokens, and you've only got 3 at any given time, you've got these 3 action tokens which allow you to move 1, 2, or 3 spaces, but you also need to use them for other actions you might take on your turn. So you can move 3 spaces, but if I spend this token to move, then I can't enter combat with the monster. That means I can't even enter a space with a monster if I can't do combat with it. You've got this number 2 space that has the trading action. The mining action is on number 1. I may save one for my next turn. So if I don't enter combat or move 3 spaces, then I've got this little token that can be saved for next time. And at the beginning of my next turn, I replace everything. Now I've got 4 actions I can do instead of 3. So it is, I think, the action point system is a really clever one in this game. You've also got that character advancement, like I mentioned. As you defeat monsters or complete quests, your reputation is going to increase. And if I go to a shop where I could buy some equipment, I can also do some training. That training might involve just revealing these tiles that match up with my reputation at that time. So if I've got a reputation of 4, I can reveal the tiles with number 2 on the back and number 4 on the back because it's even numbers at the beginning. So I might flip these things over. There's 2 at number 2. There's 2 at number 4. I have to choose one of each if they're at the same number. So I can't keep 2 number 4s on the table. I have to get rid of one. So if I want to be more of a prospector, I would choose this one. You may be able to tell on the camera up here that I've got the French version of the game. It's not an English version. So luckily we're in Canada where I'm bilingual, so that's okay. So maybe he wants to be a prospector and eventually he'll train to do that. Maybe he wants to make sure that when he's fighting a monster that he reduces, that's a lucky rabbit's foot, he reduces the monster's die roll by 2. So you're getting rid of some of those things. So there's a skill tree which adds to the replayability of the game. Of course, when you go to a shop, once you've earned some of these metal coins, check these out. You've got these metal coins that you're going to be spending on the resources, and maybe I'll sell some treasure that I found along the way, but I might also want to buy some armor, and I might buy some greaves, and that's going to increase my maximum health, which will allow me to survive longer in combat. I might, if I'm at the alchemist, I might buy a healing potion so that I can heal myself as I'm battling against these creatures that I'm going to find on the board. So RPG style advancement, you're upgrading and improving your equipment. If I mine and I find some gems, I can add them, or if I find gems as treasure or I buy gems at the store, I can add them to my equipment. That gives them some magical ability as well. Another resource you'll be collecting during the game are monster cards, and those monster cards are abilities or special attacks that you can do when you're attacking the hero. So if my hero draw lands on a space like this that has a monster icon, I'm going to draw a monster that I'm going to fight, but my opponent is the one who controls that monster. So the other player is going to be rolling the monster's dice, and I'll draw a monster from the deck and I'll roll draw's dice and my opponent will roll the monster's dice. But as you're collecting these monster ability cards around the board, you get to play them against the player when you're playing as the monster. So even when it's draw's turn, the other player still might have some actions that he gets to do when he's controlling the monster. You'll draw The monster cards are great too. There's 3 decks. They're organized in terms of power, level 1, level 2, level 3. The level 2 monsters are super strong. You need to be well prepared for those battles. It tells you on the top of the deck what range of difficulty you're going to be facing. This monster is going to have a health of 5 to 7. It's going to do 1 to 5 damage, 1 to 5 injuries to your character when you fight against him. The monster card gives you the monster's health once you flip it over, and then you get to draw 1 monster ability card. You get 2, they're called chaos tokens. That allows the monster to do something, and 1 reroll token. So it is dice-based combat. You've got these, well, they're fancy looking dice, but they're just numbered from 1 to 6. You're rolling 2 of them at any given time. That you're going to compare your roll to the damage on your weapon, or sometimes there are abilities that require you to do a roll. I can flip this lucky rabbit's foot to use it once per turn, and that's going to reduce the monster's roll by 2. But this monster, if he rolls between 7 and 10, is going to do 3 injuries to draw, and that's going to drop his health down by 3. But I can subtract 2 from his roll by turning this sideways, so that might cause one less wound to occur during that battle. Like I said, there are some randomness mitigation tokens here. So you get these reroll tokens that will allow me to reroll a die or force the monster to reroll a die. If I get a really bad roll as the hero, or the monster gets a really good one, there's a God's favor die in the middle of the table that's on a card that will increase by 1 each time there's a really good monster roll, a really bad hero roll, and you can spend those points to add to your roll or to increase your health, or there are some things that you can use that for to get another reroll token that you can use later on. The only thing you get to carry with you after the combat are those tokens. So it's good if you manage to get to grab one of those before you leave, because those are very useful. And they're, I wouldn't say hard to come by, but you need them for those combats, especially when they get more difficult. What skills are you working on when you play a game like Euthia, Torment of Resurrection? Well, of course, you've got that clever action token system where you're choosing between movement and being able to do the action that's on the bottom of that movement token. So you're trying to budget your coins so that you can open up slots and buy things at the store. You're trying to budget your actions. You're trying to be as efficient as possible on your turn. And if you're planning and working on being efficient and you're budgeting, those are all examples of executive functioning skills. The behaviors that you need to work towards a goal. And the things that we were doing in this game, both myself and my friend found interesting enough that it really kept our attention the entire time. We played a 1-hour scenario over 6 hours because we stopped counting the rounds and we just kept going to see what would happen. So it keeps your attention as well. And if you've got a kid who's interested in these kinds of mechanics, then you're stretching that attention, sustained attention muscle a little bit too. Another thing that's happening, of course, is that you've got to move around this board. There's certain spaces where different things are going to happen. You've got to plan your move and make sure you've got enough tokens to get where you want to go. Sometimes if I don't have a combat token, I'm going to have to go around these monster spaces. And so there's a bit of visual spatial planning and problem solving involved in that as well. But primarily we are talking about planning ahead, budgeting, and efficiency. So the executive functioning skills. Final thoughts about Euthia, Torment of Resurrection. Well, this is a huge game with a steep learning curve. It's probably one of the more complicated games I've ever played, not just for this show, but in general. It's super complicated, but once you get used to those mechanics and how the abilities work, it does go quite a bit faster. Even over those 6 hours that we played, by the end, we were zipping through the combat a lot better, and we had the rules figured out. It was always fun, though, to have some new piece of equipment we could try or some new magical ability that we could test out. But it is complex to learn. It does speed up as you get going. It's so open-ended. There are so many choices. It's really got that RPG feel. Now, I loved playing D&D with my kids when they were younger, and they would bring their friends over, and I'd run games of Dungeons and Dragons with them, and it was a lot of fun, but D&D was a game that I found I needed to do a lot of prep work for. I needed to do some reading and figure out what the story was all about and understand the characters in order to run a game that the kids would enjoy. Sometimes we ad lib things, but mostly things were planned ahead. That was something that did take up a lot of time in terms of the preparation. So we didn't get to do it very often. But here's a game where you're advancing your character through a single scenario. It doesn't carry over like a legacy game from one to the next. You can do multiple scenarios if you wanted to, but I really do kind of like that you can pick up and play at whatever level you want and do whatever kind of mission as part of the story you'd like to do. So you may be able to play a scenario in an hour, and it's probably going to be longer than that when you're playing with new players. But if you've got a group that you've kind of worked things out, then you can zip through a scenario with relative speed. But 1 hour is not the amount of time you're going to be spending playing this game, because it takes at least 30 minutes to set it up and another 30 minutes to tear it down. Probably more than 30 minutes. It's going to probably take me more than 30 minutes to put away just the stuff that I've showed you today, because there's dozens of baggies full of things. I'm going to have to sort all of these things out and reset all of the piles of stuff and put them back into their individual containers, and that does take a long time. It takes a long time to put it out on the table. It takes up a lot of space on the table, so you do have to be organized in how you set it up. It takes a long time to put it away again at the end. So I'm going to be clearing a space, a whole cube on my bookshelf to fit this giant box. And unfortunately, I like the game. It was a lot of fun. I don't think it's going to see the table that often, just because of the amount of time. Like my son would say, "Hey, we've got half an hour. Let's play, instead of watching a TV show, let's play a game. Maybe we play a couple of games if they're short ones. We can get together and do a strategy game in an hour or two." And he doesn't mind those things. But for me to say, let's spend the day, let's spend a whole afternoon, that's a tall order for kids who are both in university. So it will make it hard for me to play this with my kids, even though they like it and I like it, and it is a lot of fun, and the components are fun, and the metal coins are fun, and I even like those containers. But there's so many things, and it does take a long time to play. It's also heavy. I think it was 3 Minute Board Game said the Torment is transporting this game anywhere you want to take it, because it weighs, I don't know how many pounds it weighs, but it's a heavy game. And like I said at the beginning, heavy in both senses of the word. But we did have a lot of fun playing this game. I'm thankful that Dia Games sent this game my way. I'm sorry that the company is closing its doors, because I think this is a fun one to play. I'm hoping that you'll leave me comments of other games that are similar in the comment section here below the video. Or you can always, of course, email me at brian@brainsongames.ca. Brainsongames.ca is the website. That's where future episodes will go. The previous ones are up there already. Brains on Games is the Twitter handle and the Facebook page and the Instagram feed, so we're all over the place. And if you enjoyed this video and you want to be notified of future ones, you can head on over to YouTube and click that subscribe button. Thanks for joining me, and hopefully I'll see you next time.